The signal could not be clearer, and the timing is deliberate. Pope Leo XIV has drawn a firm doctrinal line at a moment when Marian devotion is surging in visibility, intensity, and digital reach. By approving a decree that explicitly rejects the title co-redeemer for the Virgin Mary, the Pope is not correcting a minor theological misuse of language. He is reasserting the central axis of Christian faith, that salvation flows from Christ alone. This is not an abstract clarification for scholars. It is a broadcast-level intervention, aimed at the whole Church, delivered in response to a devotion that has begun to blur into doctrinal confusion, especially in online Catholic spaces where emotion often outruns catechesis. What happened, in plain terms, is this: the Vatican's doctrinal office issued a decree, approved by Pope Leo XIV, stating that Mary must not be called co-redeemer or co-redemptrix. The document stresses that Jesus Christ alone saved humanity through his sacrificial death on the cross. Mary's role, while exalted and essential within salvation history, does not extend to sharing in the act of redemption itself. The language of the decree is careful but firm, warning that such titles risk eclipsing Christ's unique and exclusive role. This closes a debate that has lingered for decades, occasionally resurfacing through petitions, private devotions, and theological advocacy, but never before addressed with such direct institutional finality. Why this matters immediately is because the decree is responding to a living, expanding phenomenon, not a settled historical dispute. Marian devotion today is no longer confined to parish processions or traditional prayer societies. It is amplified through social media, charismatic figures, viral claims of apparitions, and emotionally charged narratives of supernatural signs. In this environment, theological precision becomes pastoral urgency. The Vatican is signaling that devotion detached from doctrinal balance can become spiritually destabilizing. When Mary is portrayed as sharing in redemption itself, the hierarchy of truth within Christian faith is distorted. The decree functions as a corrective brake, protecting Christocentric faith at a moment when popular religiosity risks drifting into quasi-mythic excess. Why this happened now points to a deeper strategic and theological intent. Pope Leo XIV is inheriting a church shaped by both intense devotional energy and widespread doctrinal fragmentation. By approving this decree, he is aligning himself with a trajectory set by his immediate predecessors while asserting his own magisterial authority early and decisively. The intent is not to diminish Mary, but to safeguard her true place within Catholic theology, exalted, obedient, and wholly oriented toward her Son. This is a recentering move. It tells bishops, theologians, and the faithful that clarity will take precedence over sentiment, and that authentic devotion must always deepen, not dilute, the mystery of Christ. What is most striking in this decree is not only what is said, but what is carefully left unsaid. The document does not engage in extended Marian praise, nor does it rehearse familiar devotional language that often cushions doctrinal correction. There is no rhetorical balancing act, no sentimental reaffirmation before the prohibition. This omission is intentional. Pope Leo XIV is allowing the doctrinal point to stand on its own authority. By refusing to soften the message with excessive qualifiers, the Vatican signals that this is not a matter open to reinterpretation or gradual reception. Silence, here, functions as discipline. It tells theologians and devotional leaders that clarity now outweighs accommodation, especially where confusion has already taken root. Equally revealing is the absence of any endorsement for alternative Marian titles or compensatory theological formulas. The decree does not suggest a better phrase to replace co-redeemer. It simply closes the door. This is an institutional signal that the Church is not interested in semantic creativity around redemption. The language choice is restrained, juridical, and final. Pope Leo XIV is approving a text that deliberately avoids poetic theology in favor of doctrinal boundaries. The message to ecclesial influencers is unmistakable. Marian theology is not a playground for innovation driven by online enthusiasm or ideological identity. Authority is being reclaimed from the margins and recentered within the Church's teaching office. The decree's tone also omits any reference to internal debates or factions within the Church, even though such divisions are well known. There is no mention of conservative or progressive camps, no acknowledgement of competing theological schools. This omission is strategic. By not naming sides, the Vatican refuses to legitimize the debate as ongoing. Pope Leo XIV is not entering a discussion, he is ending one. The institutional signal is that some questions no longer deserve airtime. When the magisterium speaks with this level of brevity and restraint, it is asserting closure rather than conversation, signaling that continued agitation around this title now risks disobedience rather than development. Finally, the absence of apocalyptic language or moral panic is itself revealing. Despite references to exaggerated devotion and social media-driven phenomena, the decree does not dramatize the threat. There is no warning of schism, heresy, or punishment. This calm restraint communicates confidence. Pope Leo XIV is projecting a church that is not reactive, but governing. The institutional signal is maturity, authority exercised without anxiety. The Vatican is saying it sees the trend, understands its mechanisms, and is intervening precisely, not emotionally. In doing so, it signals that future doctrinal clarifications under this pontificate may follow the same pattern, measured, firm, and unafraid of displeasing vocal subcultures. To understand the weight of this decree, it must be placed within the long arc of Marian doctrine and papal caution. The question of Mary's role in salvation has surfaced repeatedly across centuries, often during periods of heightened devotion or cultural upheaval. While the Church has consistently affirmed Mary as Theotokos, the Mother of God, and honored her unique cooperation in God's salvific plan, it has also guarded the singularity of Christ's redemptive act. The language of co-redeemer has always existed at the edges of theological discourse, never fully absorbed into magisterial teaching. Pope Leo XIV is therefore not introducing novelty, but sealing a boundary that history has repeatedly approached, tested, and then retreated from. Historical parallels are instructive. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Marian devotion intensified in response to secularization, political upheaval, and anti-clerical movements in Europe. Calls for new Marian dogmas emerged as acts of spiritual resistance. Yet even then, popes exercised restraint. The Church defined the Immaculate Conception and the Assumption, but stopped short of redefining redemption itself. This pattern reveals a consistent doctrinal instinct: elevate Mary without rivaling Christ. Pope Leo XIV stands squarely within this lineage of discernment, choosing consolidation over expansion at a moment when emotional devotion once again presses against theological limits. Recent papal precedents sharpen this context further. Pope John Paul II occasionally used the term co-redeemer in earlier writings, reflecting his deep Marian spirituality, but he gradually withdrew the language in the face of growing theological concern. Pope Benedict XVI rejected the title outright, warning that it obscured Christ's unique mediation. Pope Francis went further, publicly criticizing the term as misguided and spiritually unhelpful. What Pope Leo XIV has done differently is to move from personal theological preference to institutional closure. By approving a formal decree, he transforms a trajectory of papal caution into settled doctrine, ending ambiguity that had lingered through silence rather than decision. Doctrinally, the decree reinforces a core ecclesial principle: hierarchy of truths. Mary's cooperation is real, but derivative; exalted, but subordinate. Redemption flows from the cross, not alongside it. This has implications for internal church dynamics, particularly in how authority responds to digitally driven religiosity. Pope Leo XIV is signaling that doctrinal development will not be crowdsourced through devotion, petitions, or viral piety. Teaching authority remains anchored in continuity, not intensity. In this sense, the decree is not only about Mary, but about how the Church governs belief in an age where emotion, identity, and visibility often compete with tradition and theological depth. The immediate impact of this decree will be felt unevenly but decisively across the Catholic world. For most of the faithful, especially those formed by ordinary parish life, the clarification may pass quietly, reinforcing what they already believe about Christ's unique role in salvation. For others, particularly devotional movements and online communities that have elevated Marian language beyond doctrinal precision, the impact will be disruptive. Pope Leo XIV has drawn a line that requires adjustment, not interpretation. the Church is signaling that authentic devotion must be purified by truth, even when that purification feels like loss. In doing so, the Vatican protects unity by preventing parallel theologies from taking root under the banner of popular piety. In the short to medium term, this move will likely calm an increasingly polarized debate. Progressive Catholics may welcome the decree as a reaffirmation of theological balance, while some conservative or charismatic groups may experience it as restraint or correction. Institutionally, however, the outcome is stabilizing. Bishops, seminary formators, and catechists now have unambiguous guidance. There is no longer room for speculative teaching or promotional campaigns around Marian co-redemption. Pope Leo XIV has reduced noise within the system, allowing pastoral energy to be redirected toward evangelization, catechesis, and Christ-centered devotion rather than internal theological dispute. The forward signal embedded in this decision extends beyond Marian theology. It suggests how this pontificate will engage emerging religious phenomena in the digital age. Claims of apparitions, viral devotions, and charismatic personalities will be evaluated through doctrinal clarity rather than emotional appeal. The Vatican is positioning itself as both watchful and decisive. Pope Leo XIV is demonstrating that when trends threaten to distort the core of faith, intervention will be direct and institutional, not merely rhetorical. This sets expectations for future responses to similar movements, whether they concern private revelation, sacramental practice, or doctrinal language amplified by social media. What should be watched next is not backlash, but alignment. Will episcopal conferences echo the language of the decree? Will devotional publishers and influencers adjust their terminology? Will catechetical materials quietly shift tone? These are the real indicators of impact. The strong analytical close is this: Pope Leo XIV has not diminished Mary, he has protected her true place by reasserting Christ's absolute centrality. In doing so, he has reminded the Church that devotion reaches its highest form not when it multiplies titles, but when it leads the faithful, without confusion, back to the cross where salvation was accomplished once, fully, and forever.